we're going to move on to our final topic here, Rob, and it's a doozy.
Uh-oh.
Paramount, David Ellison is reaching out to creatives. Paramount, this is from Variety. Paramount's David Ellison vows anti-monopoly approach in Warner Brothers Discovery bid. We'll get into that. Pledges 30 films annually in an open letter to creative community. Now, there's a caveat to that 30 film promise there, but let's get into this. David Ellison is, of course, not giving up, as it reads here, on his relentless pursuit of Warner Brothers Discovery and his plan to counter rival suitor Netflix. In an open letter out on Thursday to journalists around the world, including the UK and France, Ellison outlined specific commitments for the creative community, pledging that the combined entity would produce at least 30 theatrical features annually while maintaining a competitive marketplace. That all sounds good on the surface. We'll touch on that in a second after I read this one more paragraph. In the letter, which was written in different languages and addressed to the creative community, fellow film lovers, and television fans, the industry at large, Ellison emphasized, are best served by the greater choice, not less, and by a marketplace that encourages the full spectrum of filmmaking, content creation, and theatrical exhibition, not one that eliminates meaningful competition by creating a monopolistic and dominant entity. There's more to this, but let's touch on this first, Rob. First off, when it talks about a monopoly, I don't know. I feel like if a movie studio that's doing the same thing as Warner Brothers wants to take over Warner Brothers, which then creates some overlap where thousands of jobs are going to be lost, and now you're laterally making a lateral move and horizontally growing, that's more monopolistic than something that's streaming centric like Netflix and now wants to also jump into the theatrical realm. I don't see, there may be an argument for, a monopoly on Netflix side. I think that's fair. I'm not saying that's, but how is first off, how is Paramount not monopolistic by taking over Warner Brothers?
Well, look, I totally agree with you. I like everybody I've ever talked to that's worked for David Ellison or worked at Skydance really likes him. Mm-hmm. I've never heard anybody say they didn't like David Ellison. And I came close to working with Skydance on a project. We had a flashing kind of green light, but then it didn't happen. But I just think that like Netflix is going to leave Warner Brothers intact. Warner Brothers is still going to Warner Brothersing. Yeah. That's what they're doing. And you have a team of people with Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca and the whole studio. I love what people like George Feltenstein, who runs Warner Archive, is doing, going back into the Warner Brothers catalog. And they're doing all kinds of restorations. They're going deep, deep, deep. They've made some really great deals with other companies like Criterion and Arrow and Shout Factory to release Warner Brothers product in great physical media formats. But those companies are also paying for the restorations of the films. So they're aggressively protecting their legacy. And at the same time, they're making great theatrical movies. HBO is still cranking along. And like you said, to me, Paramount and Warner Brothers are basically the same thing. And there's no way that you're not going to gut Warner Brothers.
Right.
I don't understand. Like, I want to see Paramount. Give me 3 or 4 or 5 years of impressive creative output from Paramount.
Right.
They've made some great moves, acquiring some great talent, but we haven't seen what they're going to do. Why are they going after another studio, which, by the way, they're just going to wreck it? I don't see everything that he says, we're going to make this many movies. You could be making that many movies in your own studio.
Yeah, and we'll get into the caveats of that because it's a little deceiving on its surface. But go ahead.
Yeah, it really is. And where I think that Netflix is acquiring, look, Netflix, and we've talked about this, their business is different than what Warner Brothers is doing. Warner Brothers is like Netflix is, call it a distribution company. Warner Brothers is a manufacturing company, even though, the Netflix makes their own movies as well. But what Warner Brothers is doing is making a product and feeding it to Netflix. What's going to happen with Paramount is they're going to supplant Warner Brothers, whereas Netflix and Warner Brothers can coexist. Paramount and Warner Brothers can't. Yeah, Paramount and Warner Brothers can't coexist.
Yeah. Now, I won't get too much into the politics of it all, but the article does mention that he went to specifically EU members. knowing the current state of affairs of the European Union in this current administration, and knowing that the Ellisons are partnered in many ways with the current administration, do you think the EU is really even like listening to them? And it's like, well, why would we want to give you guys more power when we
I
know
don't.
who you're in cahoots with?
Yeah, I don't know what they're trying to do. And in my mind, I mean, I just want to see great movies and great TV shows and be entertained.
Mm-hmm.
The Ellisons, I don't hear a lot about that coming from that camp. They want Warner Brothers. They want all of these things, but why do they want them?
Right.
So I think that's
and yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, whereas I hear Ted Sarandos is talking about 45-day windows and allowing Warner Brothers to stay intact and making the films they want to make. They've got a very robust slate. Warner Brothers just brought over those three executives from Neon, and they've got a new company that's going to make lower budget fare that is also very exciting. And I know that Paramount had they had like Walter Hamada come over from Warner Brothers and start a new division. Primate is an example of what they've done, which is exciting. So I want to see Paramount do that kind of work. Where's that work?
Right. So now let's jump back in here to the article. It says the movie is part of Ellison's big lobbying push to rally support for his $108 billion hostile bid for Warner Brothers versus the $83 billion all-cash deal from Netflix. So he traveled to meet with these EU members to sway their decision. But I just want to bring out a point here is that, yes, it's 83 versus 108 billion, but under the Netflix deal, Warner Brothers still holds their cable company and they can sell that. I think Ellison valued their cable holdings at like $1 per share, and Warner Brothers feels it's somewhere in between or closer to $2. So you'd have to add in factor in the fact that they'd be selling that off too. So it's not that big of a gap in the price. Right. They can choose their seller at that point. Back to the article. Here's where it gets into the promises. Should his hostile bid succeed? Are you like that? You tell me promises. Ellison committed that Paramount, Skydance, and Warner Brothers would each produce a minimum of 15 high-quality feature films per year. Paramount has already increased its output from 8 to 15 since closing Paramount, Skydance. Okay, so the headline read 30. It's 15 to 15 shared. Okay, but here's the thing. If we look over at Paramount, Primate's great. You got Scream 7. This is the 2026 slate for Paramount. And we'll look at Warner Brothers. An untitled Kendrick Lamar, Trey Parker, Matt Stone feature. Billie Eilish live like tour thing. A scary movie for whatever reason. Jackass 5. A lot of these. Scream 7 it will make more, but a lot of these are looking more like the $70-90 million range from the box office. Paw Patrol, the Dino movie, that could be big with younger audiences, of course. The Last Airbender, Street Fighter, which I think is kind of funny because they'll be competing with Mortal Kombat over at Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Then you got Ebenezer, speaking of Johnny Depp, A Christmas Carol. But I have to say, November 13th for A Christmas Carol. Not even Thanksgiving weekend, and certainly not in December. You're doing A Christmas Carol? Okay. Then Angry Birds Movie 3. Okay, so you already have your 15, or that's not even quite 15. Now let's look over here. I'm going to remove Coyote versus Acme because they sold that to Catch Up. I don't really know why that's on the list here.
Right.
You got Wuthering Heights, The Bride, They Will Kill You, Lee Cronin's The Mummy, Mortal Kombat 2, Animal Friends, Supergirl, Cut Off, Evil Dead Burn, Flowerville Street, Clayface, Practical Magic 2, Digger. So if you take off Coyote versus Acme, right now they've already got 17 films. So what's the promise here? They're going to give less films? I mean,
right.
There are...
And that slate is way more interesting than...
It's more interesting. It's higher quality to his... So I understand when he's saying, we'll do the 15 films will be high quality. Again, that's great. But what are you doing that's different that Warner Brothers isn't already doing? And then he goes on to say here, and this will probably be like the last thing we kind of touch on, but additional commitments include maintaining HBO as an independent operation. Well, sorry, Netflix is maintaining... even if Netflix absorbs HBO Max onto its website, it would just be like when you go to Amazon and you subscribe to Paramount Plus. It's a one-stop shop, but you would navigate through the tree to HBO and to their... It's not like you're losing HBO creators and content either way. So ensuring every film receives... ensuring every film receives a full theatrical window. Well, Sarandos has already promised that as well.
Yeah.
And preserving the home video window following theatrical runs. Sarandos is also, and I'm not going to be naive and say, well, Sarandos said so, so, maybe it's whatever. But he said, however Warner Brothers runs its home rental and purchases before it goes to streaming, it's going to be the same.
Guys, we want to take a second and thank the sponsor of today's episode, PrizePicks. Well, the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than with PrizePicks, where it always feels good to be right. With the football season coming to a close, this is your last chance to jump into football action before next year, and PrizePicks is making it easy by giving you $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. What I've always loved about PrizePicks is how simple it is. You're just picking more or less on player projections, building your lineup, and rooting at home while you watch the game. I also really like their early payouts feature. If a player gets off to a hot start, you can cash out before the game even ends. And with the new social feed, you can follow other players, copy lineups that you like, or use them as inspiration for your own. So don't miss out. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code Campea to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Campea to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right.
So I understand what Ellison is saying here, but there's nothing new in his statements. And there's nothing much different than what they're already doing or what Sarandos and Netflix are promising as well. So I just don't understand what the argument is here.
I don't either. They just want the studio. They want, and I get it. I mean, I'm not privy to I don't presume to be any kind of an expert on this kind of financing and what they're doing. I only, after Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, the first job I had was working over in feature production at Warner Brothers for Senior Vice President of Production, Bill Young. It was also another, I had a good early run. And I love that studio. I love Warner Brothers. I literally, for a couple of years, walked around it. I went into every single office. I love Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And I would like to see, I think what they're doing now, they're coming off of a very creative, very robust year in 2025, and it looks like 2026 is going to eclipse that with these new guys that are starting this new division at Warner Brothers, making lower budget, more adult oriented, unique fare for the studio. I think is really exciting. And I think that the question is, what is going to bring audiences the better material? And I think that that question by a wide margin is Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Just based on their slates. Where's but that, Paramount really hasn't kicked in their engine of new creators and new people they've made deals with. And I see that, but I'm like, why are you, if Warner Brothers doesn't want you, or if the shareholders don't want you, and nobody really wants you, why are you still fighting for it? Please explain why this is so important to you and why should it happen? I mean, if Warner Brothers' job is to make great programming, great entertainment. They're already doing that. And it seems to me that Paramount is not exactly I am not instilled with great enthusiasm by what they're planning to do. What are they planning to do?
When Ellison says you're going to have more options, I'm like, explain how that's possible.
Right.
More options of what?
I mean, look, what's going to happen is it's going to get gutted. And I'll tell you one thing, what Warner Brothers is doing over like Warner Archive and preserving their legacy by robustly going in and retransferring and doing new restorations of all of their old films. Paramount's not doing that.
Yeah.
Paramount they've allowed their entire library to be distributed by other companies. Except Black Rain. Where's Ridley Scott's Black Rain? I really want that in 4K. But give it to Vinegar Syndrome, give it to Kino Lorber, they'll put it out. But they're not doing anything.
Right.
And I would like to see them do something.
Yeah, I think to quote the movie, I think this is a bridge too far. And it's like you're moving too far too fast. You had all these great ideas for Paramount. We were excited about it. You're not even talking about Paramount anymore.
Right.
All you're talking about is your acquisition of Warner Brothers, and no one really knows why. It's like,
and they will gut the Warner Brothers has been gutted twice already.
Yeah.
It's like that lot. If you go over to the lot, it used to be a lot that was full of unbelievable amounts of activity. Now it's quiet. Bring production back. I think with Netflix, we're going to see a lot more stuff happening.
I hope. I mean, I grew up here in Burbank, so I kind of grew up on the NBC lot. You know where that's at? It's now the Burbank Studios.
Yeah, I worked at NBC for a year.
Running around there because my dad took care of all the heating and ventilation and refrigeration there. That was So I grew up like on the newsroom. I grew up like in the control booth during the Johnny Carson show and Jay Leno run, and was often even at Disney Studios and Warner Brothers lot. And those lots are dear to me.
Yeah, me too.
I was never in the industry as a kid or whatever, but I was like, I had access because when you grow up around here, you just know people with access. It's just the way it is. And I don't want to see these places gutted, like you're saying. So,
no, I would love to see Warner Brothers become the beehive of activity that it was back when I worked there in the late 80s and early 90s. I mean, I have so many fond memories of running around that lot, working on all the various movies that we were working on at the time. And, everything from Bonfire of the Vanities to Free Willy, to Defending Your Life, to Joe versus the Volcano, to The Rookie.
Joe versus the Volcano, by the way, is misunderstood. It was misunderstood, and I loved it back then. And so, I think deep down in my core, somehow I understood the film, even though I shouldn't have at my age. And a lot of people just panned it as a bad movie. It's not a bad movie.
Yeah, I was on the storm sequence. They shot that in stage 16, and I met Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks going into that sound stage. That was awesome. It was so much fun to work there, man. I loved working at Warner Brothers. Awesome.
So anyway, we've come to the end here, but I just feel like whatever Ellison is dishing out, it's not moving the needle for me. And I'm not even in like directly in the industry. I'm not affected directly, so I don't know. What do you guys think? Is Ellison making a good plea to you guys? Would you take his deal? Should we just hope he diverts his attention back to his original acquisition at Paramount, or what? Let us know.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.